Welcome. You are watching Change the World. My name is Guy Dauncey, and we like to interview guests who bring bright, colorful, new solutions, ideas to the world and things like that. My guest today is Yonas Jongkind, who is all about co-housing, and you'll hear more about that shortly. Yonas has lived in 3 co-housing projects at Windsong, in Vancouver at Groundswell. He helped form the Vancouver co-housing project. Then he went sailing with his wife and 4 children in Mexico and the South Pacific, returning to live at Pacific Gardens co-housing in Nanaimo. And he's founded a company called Amisto to help the development of co-housing, all of which begs the question, welcome, Yonas, what is co-housing?
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, co-housing is a way of living that was created by the Danes. And the idea of co-housing is that we bring more community into our lives. So a lot of urban planning has been working to isolate it from each other because the cities are a little bit complaint-based. So, in apartment buildings, you've got narrow hallway and little chances to interact. In single-family houses, you just have your garage facing the street. So for that, a lot of people don't know their neighbors that well. And as the social sciences are advancing, we're learning that there's health benefits to feeling like you're part of a community or a tribe of people around you rather than being surrounded by strangers. And in addition to the health research, it's a wonderful feeling to have to be part of a community for many people.
Our viewers have probably heard of cooperative housing, which is sort of rental arrangements, kind of rental but this is co-housing is different from co-op housing. What specifically is very different, Yonas?
Yeah, so cooperative housing is an ownership model where the co-op is set up by investors and the government, and then it rents the housing back to the residents on an affordable basis. And oftentimes in co-ops, they do have a stronger sense of community than people do in traditional ownership housing. But the main purpose of co-op housing is the ownership form to have reduced cost rentals. But co-housing is an architectural design philosophy. Jan Goodmanhoy, who started in Denmark, was an architect. So it's an architectural philosophy that resolves around the idea of creating a car-free community street within the project where children can run and play and you can chat with your neighbors, having amenities where you can, make your lives richer together, like a dining room or a wood shop or a guest room. So it's very much a design philosophy. In theory, you could have a co-housing that was also a co-op, but in BC for co-housings, we've been mainly using strata ownership.
So if we think back over our long human history, 99.9999999% of it happened without any cars.
Absolutely. Within the community, parents feel completely safe. When I moved into Windsong, I would let my 18-month-old son out into the community street, and then I knew the places that he would less likely to visit. I mean, not completely unsupervised, but I just had a feeling of safety. Like if I was doing something, he could wander down that community street. And I knew everyone in the community. Co-housing communities run 20 to 40 homes because that's the size where everyone will just naturally know everyone. So all the 3 co-housings I've lived in, I've known everyone. And I felt safe if my son is just going to walk down the street, that nothing bad will happen to him. And it's more than just cars, I think, that people are worried about in society. In co-housings, we always take the cars and we put the cars in a parking lot in the corner. The cars are just fine there. They don't mind it. Or we put the cars underneath the building if it's more of an apartment building format with underground parking. But once you come out of the cars, there's no option to drive into your garage and get to your home. It's really important to have that 2 to 3 minute walk through the community, chance to greet your neighbors and be connected in a sort of physical way on the way home. So that's what I call the community street, and it's pedestrian. And co-housing, it's not about co-living or anything like that. So units are perfectly normal: kitchens, dining rooms, bedrooms, bathrooms, they're normal sizes. The difference with a co-housing home is that the kitchen will face the community street so you can see your neighbors coming and going. And typically the bedrooms will face the private side of the home. In co-housing, we believe that for you to have a good sense of community, you also really need to have a good sense of privacy. So whereas we think a regular housing arrangement maybe has privacy and privacy, Co-housing, we got community on one side and privacy on the other. And then in addition to the community street, another different aspect is that we have what we call the common house. Some people call it the clubhouse or the mini mansion. And that's where we have a bigger dining area, a bigger kitchen, a lounge, typically like a wood shop or a craft room, a children's playroom, and other amenities that it's more economical and fun to share those amenities. And the vast majority of the people who live in the co-housing seem to like keep living in the co-housing. That's one of the reasons we formed it in Misto, is because the waiting lists on these projects are often quite lengthy. So we want to make chances for more people to come in. And it's interesting, the reason that people stay in co-housing, I think, is a little bit different than the reason that they think they're coming to co-housing. Because I think universally, my experience is that people have been in co-housing for 10 years and they stay there. It's because that feeling of connection that has been built over time. I've had more intimate relationships with men in the co-housings that have been my friends than all other areas of my life. Like my high school buddies sort of was a certain level, and my workmates and so on. But with the co-housings, and the other dads here, I've had a set of experiences where they've just like really seen me living in my day-to-day life, and many little interactions. It's not like there's any big interactions, but just like many little check-ins, like how are you doing today? What's happening in your life? Just sharing the stories of the day over many years has created a really deep sense of connection for me with these people. Now, within that too, I feel that in the co-housings, we built the relationship through all these little connections, and and at times I've just sort of like felt really supported by the community. And a lot of people worry when they come to community that maybe there'll be conflict or maybe things won't work out. And that's one of the things actually that a lot of experienced co-housers turn around, because I think I've been through conflict in co-housings a few times. And I think it's in those conflicts when we can really see people and really get to know them even better. So a lot of people moving to co-housing are worried about the conflict. But my experience has been that, and like some things are very hard to get agreement on, like what color shall we paint the door? Everyone prefers a different color, right? I think we all agree that we're going to replace the roof when it needs it.
Yeah.
Some things are more subjective. Yeah. Little bits of conflict, we do training courses and we learn how to use nonviolent communication, and we really invest in those people skills that are going to help us. Because in addition to an architectural system, it's also an intentional system. So we invest some time into making sure that our relationships with individuals in the community and the community overall are working.
So how many co-housing projects are there in British Columbia as a whole, for the whole province?
Yeah, there's nearly 30 projects in the province.
And I want to say, why so few when it's such a great way of living? Because I heard about the Souk Seniors co-housing project down in Souk, and right on the waterfront, beautiful property. I stayed there overnight, and they said on the day they opened, they had 200 people on the waiting list. Why can't we develop more co-housing projects more rapidly? Because loneliness is the biggest hidden epidemic that's happening. We talk about the housing crisis and the climate crisis and stuff like that, but loneliness is a big problem for many people, and co-housing seems to be the solution.
Yeah, co-housing is an amazing solution. It is for loneliness, and it's drawn some people into our co-housing. And I think as a man, especially, a lot of men experience loneliness, especially as they get closer to retirement age, but they don't, it's like stress. It's not something that you like experience directly. It's just like a little bit correlated with like depression and not having as much joy in your life. So it's a little bit like heart attacks too. It's like not always obvious when you're experiencing a little bit of loneliness.
But so back to my first question, why are there so relatively only 30 out of a population of 5 million people?
Yeah, that's not exactly. So I think one of the challenges is that the co-housings are traditionally organized by someone who has figured all this stuff out that we've been talking about. And they're like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go talk my friends into giving me their life savings, and we're going to buy a piece of land and create a co-housing. So it's a bit of a wild idea. And then I think another barrier is that a lot of people are very like comfortable in their lives. Like they bought their house and things are going well enough. So sometimes we see people are interested to come to a co-housing, and it's best to make that move either when you're a young parent or when you're in your like late 50s, early 60s. So you really have the capability to invest in creating a new co-housing.
So let's get practical. How does cooking and kitchens work in co-housing?
Yeah, so how it works in the co-housing is that in the units, it's all normal. And in all the co-housings, there's a community meals program, because community meals is one of the most timeless ways to build community. And for young parents, community meals are a great way to save effort, because you sort of carpool together on the community meal. So a lot of co-housings will have community meals 3 to 5 times a week. So in the community meals, sometimes they're structured as potlucks. The community I'm part of does 2 potluck style meals a week. And then there's also meal clubs. So I participate in a meal club on Fridays and Sundays. And in the meal club, it's a rotation. So you cook when it's your turn in the rotation. The other days you show up. And oftentimes the meals can go for 2 or 3 hours. Usually there's guests from outside the community, and the life and connection just goes on there. We talk about what all the kids are up to and the issues of the day.
And if you're cooking together, how do you sort out people's dietary things, their allergies, their veganism, their vegetarianism, their this, that, the other, right?
Yeah, that's very complicated. First of all, we all know each other pretty good. So we already know what the world is. So we know that we have enough people that are vegetarian, so we always provide a vegetarian option. And then we have a couple people who are gluten-free, so we provide a gluten-free option. And then there's one member of the community who's got such a complicated diet that they just bring their own food. So we make little accommodations here and there. Once a month here, we prepare a birthday cake, and then everyone whose birthday it is comes down and we sing happy birthday. So included in our sort of strata fee is a birthday cake and a birthday celebration once a month, and we always provide a gluten-free and a non-gluten-free birthday cake.
So how do you deal with shopping for all the food when you're shopping collectively? How does that work out?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So for the community meals, a lot of people at the beginning think that we should have like pantries and storage, but people can never really trust what's there. So my experience is that you're doing a community meal and a meal club, you do the shopping for what you're going to use for that meal, and then you do it. So the practice of having like bulk goods has never really seemed to pay off. It's just easier to use the store to handle the bulk goods.
And how do you handle sharing the financial cost?
So that's different. In Vancouver co-housing, for example, they keep a tally of the cost of the meal, and then they break it up by the participants. And then a couple times a year, people pay all the differences. Like if you hosted 4 meals, that cost $200, but you attended 10 meals. So they average it out. Some communities charge a fixed fee. And here, what I do in the meal club I'm part of is that there's no monetary transactions. Like you cook a number of meals that balances the number of meals that you eat. Is how the fairness is created.
Yeah, much easier.
Yeah, I'm actually all for simple systems, even if maybe I'm overpaying or underpaying by a couple dollars. Community meals relative to going to a restaurant is usually it's very economical. It's just a few dollars.
Yeah. So some people might be worrying that there's an awful lot of meetings involved to keep this whole thing going. What's the lowdown on how many meetings a month you might be attending if you're part of a co-housing group?
Yeah, so first thing to recognize, or one thing that I recognize, is that there's 2 types of people in a community. Some people we call the process-oriented people, and they like to attend the meetings and know that everything is done right and carefully planned out. And there's the other people that are more like the doers. And they like to do things. So there always has to be a balance between the 2, because the doers don't tend to appreciate the meetings very much. So there has to be a level of efficiency in the meetings so that the doers don't feel too hampered. So that has to always be struck in balance. And if left unchecked or unconscious, then you can end up with over planning things and too much meetings. So the expectation at the community I am is that everyone participate in one community, and that usually means 1 meeting a month. And then we have a community meeting, which is another meeting a month. So that's 2 meetings a month is the basic commitment. But I'm aware of people that are enthusiastic and they're probably doing like pop-ups and 10 to 12 meetings a month. So there's wherever you want to land on that meeting spectrum, it's possible.
So here on Vancouver Island, where Change the World generally shows the most, how many opportunities are there for people to get involved in a new co-housing project?
Right. So right now there's 5 projects on the island that are done, and there's a group organizing in Duncan, or Duncan/Chemainus. They're hoping to get a site in Chemainus. And then also Amisto is organizing another project in Lost Lake, or in Nanaimo, North Nanaimo, near Lost Lake. It's kind of near Piper's Lagoon. And that's a site on a hill. And that project is looking for members right now. We're just finishing the architectural design.
So fill me in, if someone's interested in getting to look at the Lost Lake project in Nanaimo to become a member, what would they do?
Yeah, so there's I guess there's 3 parts. You've got to learn about the site and the address and see if that works for you. Then you have to learn about the members, like is there shared values there? And then after that, we ask people to make a financial investment because we have to pay all the bills, our architects and engineers and land costs. And then that investment is around $50,000. And then after that, there may be opportunities to make further investments to support the project.
Let me break this down. First, go and check out the site. How do they find out where the site is?
Yeah, so the site is on the website, or you can email us and we'll give you directions. And sometimes we do tours.
And which website is that?
lostlakecohousing.ca.
lostlakecohousing.ca. And so then if they like the site, they want to meet the other people, how do they do that?
Yeah, so we have a mailing list that you can join, or you can fill in the contact form, and then we'll update you on the upcoming events.
Okay. And if they like people, think this is my kind of crowd, I like this, they then have to make a small investment or a big investment?
Yeah, then they have to invest $50,000 to become an equity member. And then that makes you a full decision maker in the group.
And that 50,000 is part of what you'll eventually pay for your unit or your house?
Yeah, once you purchase your unit, at the end, the $50,000 plus a rate of return gets credited towards the purchase price of your unit. It's part of your down payment.
Okay, and if all goes well, when would you start building and when will people be moving in?
We hope to start building in 2 years and have people moving in 2.5 years. A little bit as the city timelines are unknown to us right now.
You just said start building in 2 years and move in 2.5.
Oh, no, sorry. Start building in 1 year. Start building in 1 year. We're just doing the paperwork with the city for a year. And then after that, it's going to take 1.5 years to build. And there could be something, we don't know what, that takes another 6 months or so.
Okay. And if someone's interested in the Duncan Chemainus group, what do they do?
Yeah, so there's you can go to Duncan Cohousing or Chemainus Cohousing, and there you can sign up for the email list. And once you're on the email list, you'll get the updates about upcoming events.
Okay, and you can meet people and see if they're your kind of folks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is all fabulous. How is the mix between seniors and children and babies in a typical co-housing?
It varies a lot. When I lived in Yarrow, we had 35 people under 16. That was like a lot of families, but Yarrow is a very young working town. And here in Nanaimo, we have about 50% seniors. We have a child population, I think, of around 14 or 15. So about half of what we experienced in Chilliwack.
So let me go straight from children to the question of noise. Some people love it, some people hate it. How does it work out for noise with living closely?
Well, some people love it, some people hate it. So we had some issues with noise here a few years ago. One of the residents was a little bothered by it. She liked to keep her door open, so she had good cross ventilation, especially around 3 o'clock when all the kids come home from school. There was quite a hullabaloo, and she was often on calls and found it disturbing. And then other residents, they leave their doors open just because they like the feel of those kids coming in and creating some hullabaloo. So people respond differently to it. And the project you talked about in Souk, there is seniors co-housing, so they don't have, I think that's actually the difference between seniors co-housing and intergenerational co-housing. You know, if there's a bunch of noise happening over the pool, are you the type of person who's going to go walk and check what's going on? or you're going to walk the other direction. So that's something to be mindful of when you're involved in co-housing. It's not too much of an issue. Usually the soundproofing is pretty good. So if you close your door, the noise stays out.
Do people share cars and things sometimes too?
Yeah, co-housers do a lot of sharing. Once we have that like basis of trust and collaboration, sharing cars, like not institutional sharing cars, just informal sharing cars is very common. Like,
Yeah.
oh, can I borrow your car? Ride sharing is very common. Sharing of camping gear is very common. Sharing like kayaks and canoes is very common. Coolers and sharing food and meals. So we do a lot of garden tools. We have one shed. When someone moves in, they just, we take their tools that are better and get rid of the ones that are worse. Same for the wood shop. Always upgrading to new residents' best tools.
So when I think of the typical homeowner and how full their or our garages are with tools and equipment and kayaks and all that sort of stuff, it seems to me that by sharing, you can have far less stuff and have a lower ecological footprint on the planet.
Well, absolutely. I took canoes from my neighbors on a 5-day canoe trip, and other people have. So there's many people sharing that one canoe. So that's like probably like and even more, like if we ever in a shared meal here and we cook one pot of pasta, that uses the same amount of energy as cooking 25 pots of pasta. Well, not quite, you know what I mean? But sharing, I think, makes a huge ecological difference. And then also at Pacific Gardens, the co-housing I'm in, we elected to go rather for single family houses. We went for an apartment building. And a lot of people don't like the apartment building concept. They're not used to it. But if you think about it ecologically, like, wow, the wall I have between my house and my neighbor's house has an R value of infinity because it's heated on both sides. So our building has a really high environmental standard. And then also because we centralized all our homes into one building, the size of our land would normally have 25 homes, and we have 25 apartments in the co-housing. But it means that we have acres of free undeveloped spaces because our building is a bit smaller, and all those little dead zones between the houses that aren't that productive have been removed. So we really have very productive wild zones.
What do you do with all that green space in the Nanaimo co-housing at Pacific Gardens?
Yeah, so we have a large, ample area for vegetable gardens and flower gardens, a modest amount of landscaping around the building. And then we maintain based on the permaculture zoning system. So we have zones 3 and 4 and 5 that have different levels of wildness, and we work to maintain native plants there and species and support local wildlife by creating the right environment for that.
That sounds great. And so you use pesticides, or do you have policies on whether to use pesticides or not and that kind of thing?
Well, we try and use, rather than like a chemical pesticide, the gardeners. I'm not one of the avid gardeners, but I hear them talking about the way they plant different plants in different areas, and they work the system to manage that. I know that a few years ago we used one of the other things we have is we have fruit trees that we can manage. So if you live in your own house and you have your own apple tree, it's kind of going to produce too much apples when it does and the rest of the time. So we have a couple apple trees, but we have lots of residents to distribute the apples to, so we can maintain some really good apple trees. So we sprayed some biodegradable soap on the pears to reduce infestation of something. So sometimes we do take measures to treat insects, but we generally work to be like at a sort of an organic type level of quality.
What about housework in the common shared areas like the kitchen and the common room? Who does all the cleaning? Do you have a rota for that, or how does it work?
That's a challenge. So the first co-housing community I lived at, Windsong, we did all the cleaning ourselves. So there was like 30 jobs, and there was someone who was coordinating it. And then we figured out the hours, and it turned out it was like more work to coordinate the jobs than it was to do the jobs. So they switched, and the co-housing that I'm at right now, we just have a janitor who comes in once a week, and they clean all the common spaces, and they also clean them. It's important. They clean them to like an agreed upon standard, if you will, because at Windsong, when everyone was doing it, they had a different idea of what cleanliness was. So it's worth the investment to have a janitor to keep everything at a good level of cleanliness.
Yeah, so we've got about 2 minutes left. Are there any things that you would like to share with our viewers around co-housing that we haven't said so far?
I would encourage everyone uh, to to check it out and think about giving it a try. There's a lot about co-housing that's different than you're used to, but in terms of like quality of your life and having an ecological impact, I think that co-housing has the ability to deliver tremendous value, like really having your cake and eating it too, because you have less impact on the planet, you have more connection with people, you feel better, higher energy, more supported. And I have access to so much stuff here. I have access to the shop and all of these amenity spaces and guest rooms. So I think it's something worth getting into.
Yeah. So if you've got visitors, they can stay in a guest room. So you don't need to have a spare room in every single house.
Yeah, but again, that means that my house can be smaller. I don't have to heat this
Yeah.
guest room that's empty almost all the time. It's actually better because the guests stay in the guest room and use the common house kitchen. So if they get up at a different time than me, it's less intrusive.
Well, this has been great, Yonas. Thanks for taking the time to share with our viewers and with myself around, what co-housing is about. I encourage everyone to check out your website, amista.ca.
Yeah. And you can
Yeah,
also check out cohousing.ca to learn more about
and
co-housing.
cohousing.ca and lostlakecohousing.ca for the project in Nanaimo. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So thanks very much. So this has been, my name's Guy Dauncey. You've been watching Change the World on Spotlight. And tune in again for other scintillating, bright-minded solutions people who are looking positively at the future. So thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.